This is my story. My mom and dad took us to First Baptist Church on West Prairie Street, Decatur. And then all of a sudden, they stopped going to church. But the neighbor lady, Helen and George Hurt, across the street, they took us, 3 kids. There wasn't 4 then, there was us 3. And they took us to church. And then our Sunday school teacher at First Baptist, she had a group, 10 or 12, go in and be baptized as a group. So that's who led me to Jesus. It was a church plus the neighbor lady kept us going. I was volunteering down there at the Central Illinois auction place. We were serving food to people, customers, and I had an appointment with a lung doctor for my CPAP, breathing stuff, whatever they call that. And it was about in the middle of the afternoon, and I told Mike Cox, I says, hey, I got a doctor's appointment, but I can blow it off. We're busy down here. And Mike told me, he says, no, you got an appointment, you go ahead and go. So I went. And I went in and saw her, and she says, Harold, the test that you've had, she says, you have a lot of leg kicking movements when you had your CPAP study. She said, that could be low iron. She says, why don't you have a blood test? And I says, well, okay, are you going to schedule it? She says, well, since you're already here, why don't you just go by the lab and have a blood test? By the time I got home, the phone was ringing off the hook. And they said my platelets were panic level low. And I says, well, what in the devil are platelets? And she says, I don't want to go into that. She says, but you come back in and just go to the emergency room. Don't even go to the registration desk. She said, we'll be waiting for you. She says, and don't bump your head. And I says, why is that? She says, because if you'd happen to cut yourself, she said, you're going to bleed bad. And so I said, well, okay. So I went down there and I took my test. And all of a sudden, a doctor came in and he says, Harold, you got leukemia. And he says, I happen to be on call. He says, and I'm the best doctor that you need for this time. He was a phlebotomist. And I says, well, you've got the wrong guy. I don't have leukemia. And he says, yeah, I'm afraid you do. And I says, well, what happens? And he says, well, if your blats are like 10 or 15 below, he says, I can treat you as an outpatient. He says, if they're higher than that, you're going to have to go in and have chemo. And I said, but I'm fine. I'm going to go place a battery in God's Shelter of Love work van right now. And he says, well, let's just wait and see. And he came back in. He said, Harold, your blats are 52%. He says, you're going straight into a treatment. And had Mike not told me to go ahead and go, had the lady, female doctor, not told me to go ahead and have a blood test, and with Dr. Cruzan, not been there on call that time, and he gave me the treatment right off the bat, and he got me straightened out. I had leukemia, I had esophageal cancer, I had small cell in my esophagus, and I had from acid in the stomach, it burnt the top of where you had a valve there to shut off for regurgitation. And I forget the name of that one right there. And then I had, when they took out my esophagus, I had lymph nodes that were cancerous, and they took out 13 lymph nodes.
And none of that was related to leukemia. Those are separate cancers?
These are all 4 separate cancers, yes. They couldn't believe that I had a small cell in the esophagus and didn't have anything in my lungs, because he said small cell in the esophagus always comes from your lungs. And I have no lung cancer. I am cancer-free. I was diagnosed with leukemia back in February 2012, and that's 14 years now. And because God had a hand in all of this, it always makes me wonder, what has he got in store for me? to bring me through all this. There's got to be something. And that's another question I'd probably ask him if I was sitting at dinner with him. What have you got in store? What do I still need to do? Never give up. Never give up, because no matter how bad things look, or prognosis, that there's a reason for it, and just survive through it. I've been blessed with that attitude to where if I can't control it, not to worry about it. And my wife, she frets over a lot of things and gets upset, concerns. And I told her, I says, if you can do something about it, give 100%. Let's go get it done. And if you can't, I said, no matter what you do, it's not going to happen. It won't work. And it's because of that kind of an attitude. If I can do something, I'm going to do it. I'd stay with it until it's done. But if I can't, I just accept it. And I know when I first found out I had leukemia, the wife and I had some tearful moments up in the hospital room because it hit us just like that. But then from then on, I knew I was in good hands. The elders came out, they laid hands on me there in the hospital room. We had a good prayer. So I figured, okay, go for it.